next on the news.
I'm 72 years old. I can never remember the world being so united.
Catholic leaders coming together in New York City, pledging to help their brothers and sisters in Ukraine, starting with a donation of more than $50 million. Then it's almost time for the consecration of Russia and Ukraine. Bishop Brennan is here to tell us about how the Diocese of Brooklyn is taking part. In just about a month, she'll be executed, but Catholic bishops are stepping in for a mom of 14 who they say didn't have a fair trial. Plus, everyone always wants to know how people make it to 100. Well, we have plenty of answers for you as 9 senior citizens mark their milestone birthdays. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. $1 billion, the United States vowing to pay it forward to help European countries take in refugees fleeing Russian wrath. On their end, the U.S. promises to take in 100,000 refugees. So far, more than 3.5 million have fled Ukraine. The Catholic Church continues to respond to the humanitarian crisis, from collections at parishes to Catholic organizations on the ground in Ukraine. New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan says he can't remember the world ever being so united.
There's a unity in prayer. Secondly, there's a unity in advocacy as the world is standing up and saying this can't be tolerated.
New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan gathering religious leaders at St. Patrick's Cathedral to ramp up efforts to help the people of Ukraine, something the Archbishop of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church says requires the entire world's solidarity.
There's 10, 11, maybe 12 million people that have left their homes. They've been forced out of their homes. They're homeless. But in addition to that, there's 12 million people that are still in their homes, but they cannot survive without aid.
Then there's the more than 3 million who have fled the country. The U.S. now saying it will welcome up to 100,000 of them here.
It's a start, but Poland is a much smaller country, 1/10 the size, and it's received 2 million.
This offer from the U.S. comes after the government formally accused Russian forces of committing war crimes in Ukraine.
There have been numerous credible reports of hospitals, schools, theaters, etc., being intentionally attacked. The United Nations and other credible observers have confirmed hundreds of civilian deaths, and we believe that the exact civilian death toll will be in the thousands.
And now the Ukrainian ambassador to the UN says there's concern about human trafficking.
We are not speaking about possibility. We are speaking about how soon it happens. We are speaking about 3 million Ukrainian refugees scattered across Europe and in other countries of the world. They are multiply affected and they are very vulnerable. Meanwhile,
Archbishop Gudziak estimates that with all of the dioceses and Catholic organizations combined, the Church has given more than $50 million in aid to this humanitarian crisis.
There's a real unity in relief, in getting the people of Ukraine the supplies and just the relief that they need in a time of suffering.
Also giving an update, the president of the Catholic Near East Welfare Association, which says it has donated just over $1 million to Ukraine and the neighboring countries who are taking in refugees. The conflict has also been in Pope Francis's prayers, and in an effort to promote peace, the Holy Father will consecrate both Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The solemnity will take place Friday at St. Peter's Basilica, and at the same time, priests from all over the world will be joining him in prayer, performing their own consecrations. The Diocese of Brooklyn will join in all Friday morning starting at 8 a.m. from the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph. Mass will be celebrated in English for the solemnity of the Annunciation of the Lord, with a prayer for the consecration after. That will be repeated in Spanish at 9 a.m. and in Creole at 10 a.m. At 11, Bishop Robert Brennan will lead a holy hour prayer for peace at the Cathedral Basilica of St. James, followed by Mass at noon. Then at 1 o'clock, you can watch the Vatican consecration right here on NET. And coming up later in this newscast, Bishop Brennan will join us to talk about the consecration. He'll break down why it's so important. That's coming up on Currents News. Leading up to Friday's consecration, Pope Francis spoke out, condemning not just the conflict in Ukraine, but all instances of war. He says that's an important lesson he learned from his grandfather. During his general audience, the Holy Father insisted that the solution to conflicts isn't to fight, but to make instruments of peace.
L'odio e la rabbia alla guerra, io l'ho imparato del mio nonno, che aveva fatto il Piave nel 14. E lui mi ha trasmesso questa rabbia alla guerra, perché mi raccontai le sofferenze di una guerra. E questo non si impara nei libri né altri, si impara così, trasmettendola dai nonni ai nipoti. E questo è insostituibile.
The Pope's grandfather, Giovanni Bergoglio, was a radio operator in World War I. It's not the first time the Pope has mentioned his grandfather. He said previously that young people will never learn from the world's horrors unless they speak with their grandparents. Meanwhile, some of the world's top leaders are all together right now trying to stop what many believe could be World War III. President Biden is in Brussels meeting with NATO. His visit to Europe comes as Russian aggression intensifies, and there are fears Putin will begin using chemical weapons. The meeting hopes to outline the Western world's response, plus give details on a new wave of sanctions and military assistance.
NATO has never been more united than it is today. Putin is getting exactly the opposite what he intended to have as a consequence of going into Ukraine. We've built that same unity with the European Union and with the leading democracies of the G7.
The president also said he hopes China will not help Russia avoid sanctions. He also raised the possibility of ejecting Russia from the G20. Now to a big change in New York City's vaccine mandates. Athletes and entertainers are officially off the hook. New York City's Mayor Eric Adams said Thursday they won't have to be vaccinated to perform or take the field at home.
Only non-residents are exempt under this executive order. We expanded it to residents of New York City. It's unimaginable. We were treating our performers differently because they lived and played for home teams.
Just last week, the mayor was singing a different tune when sports fans complained that the mandate was crippling New York's professional teams. He said he couldn't just think of a few players. He had to stay focused on keeping 9 million people safe. The city's vaccine mandate still applies to a lot of other jobs, and they're not happy about Mayor Adams' new announcement. The police union calling officers second-class citizens. Remember, just weeks ago, the city suspended nearly 1,500 workers for refusing to get vaccinated, including police officers, firefighters, and sanitation workers. In response to questions about the sudden pivot in policy, Mayor Adams said the city's stance on the mandate will change as they continue to, quote, follow the science. He also added that the city will not be reconsidering rehiring the workers who were suspended due to the mandate at this time. From complaints to the mayor to complaints to the president, 10 airlines are making a plea for the planes, asking Biden to lift the mask mandate for all passengers and the testing requirement for international travelers. But will the White House give them what they want? Amy Kiley explores the factors that could be part of that answer.
These 10 U.S. airlines and cargo carriers have a request for the Biden administration. They want to get rid of mask mandates on flights and test requirements for international travel. Some European countries are starting to do that, but not everyone thinks it's a good idea.
Those countries are lifting the restrictions brutally from too much to too few.
The federal transportation mask mandate ends April 18th, barring another extension. The White House says it's consulting the CDC about lifting it earlier. That agency reports cases are trending down. It's also warning the new Omicron subvariant is more transmissible than the original version.
Our vaccines work, our boosters work, and it does not indicate more severe disease than the original Omicron.
It's still unclear who might need another booster. Some people have been clear they don't want to wear a mask.
Look around you. This is the power. We, the people, have the power.
If the Biden administration does lift the COVID-19 transportation mandates now, it can always reimpose them later.
We look at hospitalizations for COVID-19. We look at hospital capacity. And importantly, we also look at cases. So all of those go into the formulation as we use those metrics for future guidance.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
While the White House is still mulling over COVID transportation mandates, they are condemning North Korea for their latest missile launch. The East Asian nation test-fired what could possibly be its biggest intercontinental ballistic missile toward the sea Thursday. A dramatic move which experts believe is simply a show of power meant to force the international community to recognize Kim Jong-un's regime. But it comes at a scary time, many questioning if North Korea could join forces with Russia. There's a lot more news headed your way. The consecration is almost here, and Brooklyn will take part from thousands of miles away.
We're really looking for a conversion, a change of heart and mind.
From Catholic bishops to advocacy groups, why a growing movement is forming to save a woman from death row. Plus,
never realized that I would ever last this long, but the good Lord is with me every day.
God's graces abound at a Minnesota senior facility. They have 9 people who have hit birthdays over 100. Their secrets coming up. Back to our big story tonight. The Holy Father and the Catholic world turning to the Blessed Mother with hopes it'll end the war in Europe. This Friday, he will consecrate Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. But Catholics will be paying extra attention to this act of prayer, specifically to the exact wording the Holy Father chooses. As Robert Duncan reports, that's because of a prophecy decades ago and the 3 secrets of Fatima.
According to the Vatican's translations of the Messages of Fatima, when Mary appeared to the 3 shepherd children in Fatima in 1917, she told them that, to prevent war and other tribulations, she would ask for the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart. While many papal ceremonies and gestures have invoked the messages of Mary and Fatima, the date chosen for Pope Francis's act recalls St. John Paul II's act of consecration in 1984. Some groups have continued to argue that Mary's wish was never fulfilled, or that it was never done properly, because the Pope consecrated the world and not Russia. The late Father Nicholas Gruner, for example, would frequently visit Rome to lobby papal aides to attempt the act again.
We can go to 1981, 82, 83, 84, 91, 2000 with John Paul II, all the same consecration of the world, not specifically Russia.
However, Sister Lucia dos Santos, the last surviving visionary of Fatima, insisted in letters published in an Italian Catholic magazine and in conversations with Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone that the consecration had been performed correctly on March 25, 1984, by St. John Paul.
Again, that was Robert Duncan reporting. Bishop Robert Brennan joins us now to speak more about the consecration. Welcome, Bishop.
Thank you, Christine. Good to see you.
You too. So first of all, what exactly does it mean to consecrate a nation to the Immaculate Heart of Mary?
Well, it's really, in the end, an act of entrustment. All prayer is entrusting ourselves to God. And keeping in line with the message of Fatima, Mary is asking us to trust in God, but also to trust in her love to bring us to God. And so she asks for these consecrations, these times that we turn ourselves over. In this particular case, we turn over to God through Mary, the people who are suffering during this terrible war, and those who have suffered through the ages.
So how is the Diocese of Brooklyn participating in this worldwide prayer?
But, you know, Pope Francis has actually asked all the bishops of the world to take part in this prayer. And that's really, if you think about it, quite a moving experience. That what the Pope is doing is he's asking all of us to be together to pray, stop the things that we're doing. He asks us to try to do it around the same time. Now, given the reality of time zones around the world, in some parts it may be difficult. For us, it's relatively easy. Several parishes are having their own prayer through the day. We'll be praying in preparation through the morning with Net TV. We'll be holding a holy hour to prepare ourselves from 11 until 12. And then at 12, we'll join with Pope Francis in reciting the prayer of consecration. And then that will begin immediately or flow immediately into Mass, into the noon Mass for the solemn feast of the Annunciation.
What can we hope for? What are we hoping the end result, obviously? What can we hope will happen from this worldwide prayer?
Well, there are two things. There's an immediate and a more permanent hope. So the immediate hope is for cessation of the violence, for an end to this invasion, and the end to the war, and an end to the suffering. We beg God to help us as we pray for those who are suffering and to bring this war to an end. So we're looking for an immediate end to that. But the more long-term thing, and this goes back to the promise of Fatima, what we're really looking for a conversion, a change of heart and mind, a change, how appropriate we're doing it on the Feast of the Annunciation in the season of Lent. That's what Lent is all about, that conversion of heart and mind. We're seeking a conversion of heart and mind for that nation of Russia particularly. As we know, there's the history of communism there and that expulsion, if you will, of God. But now we see sort of a return to that, and so we renew our prayers and we pray for that long-term, ongoing conversion.
Now, while the Catholic bishops of Russia are all for this, they said the consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary is not magic, it is prayer. What do you think they mean by this?
Actually, that's a very, very important point, because we're not engaging in magic or in superstition. It's not by saying, the magic words, something's going to happen. And that's really been the Pope's approach to this. That's why he's asking us all to pray. So a consecration, again, comes from the heart and is asking for a conversion of hearts, and from the heart entrusting ourselves to God through our Blessed Mother. So it's very important to keep that in mind, because sometimes we can reduce some of our devotions in such a way that we lose sight of the fact that what we're doing is really praying, and when we pray, we turn ourselves over, we surrender ourselves to God. Superstition is a little bit more controlling, you do these things and you force the hand of God. That's not how we approach this. That's not how God works. But in perfect humility, and in a sense for ourselves, of all of us, of recognizing our need for God's mercy and help, we surrender ourselves and offer our heartfelt prayers. And again, that goes back to the way Pope Francis is approaching this. That's why he asked all the world to pray with him in this moment.
All right, it's going to be very powerful. Bishop Robert Brennan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be with you. I look forward to being with you tomorrow.
Okay, great. As Bishop said, the Diocese of Brooklyn will join in the Pope's prayers all Friday morning. Starting at 8 a.m. from the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph, Mass will be celebrated in English for the solemnity of the Annunciation of the Lord, with a prayer for the consecration after. That will be repeated in Spanish at 9 a.m. and in Creole at 10 a.m. At 11, Bishop Robert Brennan will lead a holy hour prayer for peace at the Cathedral Basilica of St. James, followed by Mass at noon. Then at 1 o'clock, you can watch the Vatican consecration right here on NET. Turning now to a story about an inmate and the fight for her life. Melissa Lucio was given a death sentence in 2007 after her 2-year-old daughter was found dead. But a growing group of advocates, which include the Catholic bishops of Texas, say she wasn't given a fair trial. J.D. Miles has that story.
She's one of only 6 women on death row in Texas and the only Hispanic. As of now, Melissa Lucio will head to the execution chamber on April 27th.
I think there's a very real possibility that Ms. Lucio is innocent.
State Representative Jeff Leach chairs the House Judiciary Committee and is among the growing chorus of voices hoping to stop the execution. The Republican lawmaker from Collin County agrees with those who say the 53-year-old wasn't given a fair trial.
And Melissa Lucio's case is a very troubling, maybe the most troubling case, JD, that I've ever seen. The system literally failed her at every turn.
My name is Melissa Elizabeth Lucio. I've been on death row 11 years.
Lucio's arrest and trial were documented in the recent film The State of Texas versus Melissa.
I'm the first Hispanic woman on death row.
The mother of 14 children was convicted for blunt trauma injuries that killed her 2-year-old daughter in 2007. But Lucio insists her daughter, who had a disability, fell downstairs outside the family's home in South Texas.
She fell all the way down. From the first step up there all the way down here.
Authorities interrogated the mother, who had no documented history of violence, for more than 7 hours before she told them, "I guess I did it. I'm responsible."
For her, she wasn't guilty, so she decided to answer the questions without knowing, what the outcome would be. And so she basically gave up, and that's what she told me.
Sabrina Van Tassel directed the documentary that also detailed how the chief prosecutor would later be sentenced to 14 years in prison for accepting bribes related to his work. Lucio's children have been traveling the state raising awareness and hoping to keep their mom from becoming the first woman since 2014 to be executed in Texas.
She is terrorized right now. I mean, she is counting the days. I am prepared for the worst, but hopeful that, they will see that this, was really an egregious miscarriage of justice.
That was J.D. Miles reporting. Bishops in Texas sent a letter to the state's Board of Pardons and Paroles, Governor Greg Abbott, and the district attorney advocating on Lucio's behalf, writing this: "We are also fervently praying that clemency be granted to Miss Lucio, not solely because of the Church's opposition to the death penalty and the inherent dignity of every human life, but also due to the mitigating circumstances surrounding her case." Still to come on Currents News, there must be something in the water. A Minnesota facility celebrates 9 seniors hitting the 100-year mark. The birthday boys and girls have some advice for you. It's a dream team turning 100, the whole lot of them. 9 Minnesota seniors celebrated a big birthday Wednesday, one they've been looking forward to for years. They call it a century march, with each birthday boy and girl receiving a crown and sash to mark the major milestone. But the thing is, many of these seniors are actually well over 100 years old. They were forced to cancel their celebrations because of the pandemic, but that wasn't the case Wednesday. The Dream Team once again joining their loved ones and thanking God for the opportunity.
Never realized that I would ever last this long, but the good Lord is with me every day and has been, and it means a lot to me.
The birthday bash was made possible in part by the Good Samaritan Society, a nonprofit committed to providing housing and services to America's seniors. And for those looking to make it to 100 themselves, these seniors only have one piece of advice to offer: appreciate each day. And happy birthday to them. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.